Okay, so now we'll wait till this adjusts a little bit. So I think I'm going to call this Watercolor Alchemy of a sorts. And this is for those of us who are pigment geeks. I love always reading labels. I'm a bit of a pigment geek. I have a spreadsheet which breaks down every tube of watercolor that I have. And the brand name, the pigments that make it up, and all the other good stuff, whether they're light fast. For anybody that doesn't know how to read a tube of watercolor, they're all a little bit different, but not significantly different. Now, they do all rate their light fastness with little stars. So the more stars, the higher the quality of the light fastness. The lesser the stars, the little asterisks means that they could fade over time under intense light or direct light. Now, indirect light means that perhaps you have a front window facing south, and you have your art on the perpendicular wall. So with this being the light coming in on the south and your wall is here and you have your artwork on the wall, that would be almost direct light because it's going to be reflected quite harshly. Obviously, if you have your artwork here and like right in the light, that's pretty intense. And even for the high fastness or high light fastness, I'm pretty sure that there'll be some changes over a small amount of time under the direct light. And our sun isn't the same anymore. It seems to be more intense, more white. I can remember growing up as a kid that the sun was more yellow and now it's more white. So, we don't know what's happening there. Everything's changing, right? And no, I'm not going to say it's climate change because I don't believe in that rubbish. I believe that we cycle, that the whole construct cycles every so many 100 years and things get reset and yada, yada, yada. And that this is just another money grab by the puppeteers. But I digress. This is going to be about watercolor alchemy. I love it because we talk about, the pigments that we use to create color. And the reason why I love watercolor is because of the watery aspect to it and the fact that you can get these beautiful transparent and even heavy pigmented colors onto watercolor paper. Now, that being said, today I actually have 3 types of watercolor paper here just to show. I do not use cellulose. I have it. I don't use it for my good paintings. This is Arches and this is Arches Rough. I use Arches. It's consistent, it's high quality, and when I'm going to paint a painting to sell, my clients are going to get it on the best of the best. Now, the difference is that this is 100% cotton, and I shouldn't be putting my hands straight down on it. Always use the back of your hands if you can when you're on or the sides of it or whatever, because we have oil on our hands, and that will get transferred to the paper. And then when you go to put your water and paint or pigment on it, you'll get these little resist marks, and that's because of the oil on your fingers. Now, cellulose, you'll get that anyway because the absorbency isn't the same with wood pulp or cellulose paper. Um, you can get some papers actually that are pretty good. They're 50% cotton, 50% cellulose. So that's for those who are a little bit more cost savvy. I think it was Etchers, which is a great little company. They have a pad that's 50% cotton, 50% cellulose, and it actually works really well. I've played with a lot of different types of watercolor paper, and I always go back to Arches. Now there's people who swear by Fabriano, some who swear by the Canson, the higher, obviously professional grade, the cotton. Otherwise, Canson is just cellulose. I don't care if you say it's high quality cellulose or whatever. It's still cellulose. It's still wood pulp. But like I say to my students, if all you could afford is cellulose paper, you get to know the cellulose paper and its behaviors, and you can get around its shortfalls. But that being said, that there's no real consistency when you're using cellulose, as you would if you're using 100% cotton. Cotton is absorbable, plain and simple. So you can't change that fact. And Arches creates and has been creating consistent quality watercolor paper. I know exactly how it behaves, and if there's any issues, with the painting that itself, then that's on me, right? It's something I'm not doing right on my end before I bring it to the surface. So because I know the absorbency of this is going to be top notch all the time. They put their name behind it for a reason. So anyway, that being said, I'm going to use a little cellulose just to show how the paint looks, because watercolor paint will react differently if it's soaked in. Do I pre-soak my paper? No, I don't. I haven't pre-soaked my papers in years. I tend to come in wet on dry. Sometimes it's just going to be a project painting instead of and then there's other times where I will sit for an afternoon and I will do wet on wet and all. So, but the way I do that is I'll use a heavier weight, to 200 to or 300 pounds, so I don't have to deal with the buckling. And or I will take my I use these Corplast pieces. You can buy these at any sign store, but Michael's also has them too for a really good price. And then I just cut them down to a usable size. And then what I do if I want to do wet on wet, right, is I will wet this down, completely saturate the surface on there, and then I will put it on top of that wet. And then I will wet this again, and it acts like a suction. So the wet behind will suction to the surface of the Corplast, and then the wet on top. And I don't even have to worry about taping it or anything. It's really quite brilliant. That was I learned that from an artist, and I'm sorry I forget her name. She's a brilliant watercolor artist as well as an acrylic painter. She hasn't painted in watercolor for some time, and you'll find that with a lot of artists who are quite proficient with paints and pigments. They do beautiful work on the surface of whatever surface they choose to work on. And if the name comes to me, hopefully maybe I can add it into the comments if I remember. But a lot of artists will go back to the easier medium, which is acrylic and or oil, because watercolor isn't an easy medium. You have to, a lot of it, and it's just like wet felting, and why I like wet felting so much too. You're not as in control as you think you are. Now you can trust the process and be happy with, maybe a surprise outcome, then that's all the better, depending on what kind of painter you're going to be. So now I'm getting into all this theory, and I didn't really want to do that. But it's such a beautiful journey. Watercolor, painting with watercolor. I was introduced to watercolor, and I'm going to say it, in 1980. Yep, 1980. That's a long time ago. And I went to university, was first introducing night courses, which was quite unique at that time because everything was all on days. There was a lot of people who were actually requesting, evening classes in the arts. Of course, there were evening classes for some people in languages and things like that. And I was living in Lethbridge, Alberta at the time, and the university there had started offering evening classes, which was fantastic. And so they're well known for their arts program, the University of Lethbridge at that time. And so anyway, they had an open house where you could go in and meet the artists and that sort of thing, and or the class. And of course, they had your oils and your acrylics, and there was a watercolor. And I went into the watercolor room first, and that was it. I was done. I looked at this medium, and up to that point, I was always an artist, even as a young child. and just basically use pencil crayons and, inks and pencils up to this point. And I wanted to learn to branch out and use some paints. And I was first introduced to watercolor, and I was absolutely gobsmacked at the the beauty, the jewel tones, this beautiful, watery, mystical paint and results that this woman had got. It just struck me. There's a side of me that loves fantasy and, and just beautiful flowing, watery, like fluid surfaces and things like that. Like that's why I like inks. I really liked inks too, because they were thin and I could spread them across the page. And so naturally I was drawn to it. I was absolutely in love at first sight. And so that's what I did. I painted with watercolors, and I actually didn't even start using acrylics till probably the 90s. So, and oils as well. So I thought, well, I might as well figure out these, but very easy to pick up. I am a little bit of a color geek anyway, so color theory was something that was very much of interest to me. And so that's where I started to sort of geek out a little bit with pigments. But then I think my profession being in engineering and engineering design sort of helped that along. The left brain kicked in and thought, we got to organize this stuff. I'm just taking a drink of water there. So anyway, I geek out. Some days I'm here and I pull out my watercolors. So I primarily use Winsor Newton and Daniel Smith. I do not use student grades personally for my own painting, but I do use student grades for my classes. I didn't in the beginning, but because now it's become such a costly, I supply the watercolor for the classes. And I have learned that they probably have used more paint than I got paid for the class. So I thought, but how I worked around that though was Cotman is Winsor Newton's student grade, but it's one of the best student grades out there. The fact that Winsor Newton is, I'm going to use a little pun here, transparent on their labels. They tell you what the pigments are. Student grade tends to be a little bit more watered down, but not in the sense of water added, but more like a binder. So of course, gum arabic, less pigment and more binder. But the Cotman, you wouldn't even, there's not enough to really even tell the difference, but they also may use more of a hue as opposed to a pure pigment. Excuse me. Science has made a lot of leaps and bounds where we've got a lot of chemically synthetic paints and all of that for the last little while. So anyway, the other one that I have discovered, because I really got my blinders on and I was a bit of a paint snob there, where I only use the Winsor Newton or the Daniel Smith. In North America, those are the two primaries. I know in Europe, Schminke, Sennelier, if I'm pronouncing them incorrect, just forgive me. I believe Rubens, there's a Rubens and what have you. The other one I was introduced to too is Holbein or Holbein. I found that many of their watercolors tended to be a little bit more opaque than the Winsor Newtons and the Daniel Smiths, but that's not completely true. It's just the ones that I selected were more, they would have a white tint, they would have a white in them or something like that, or it was just the mineral itself. But since I've become more savvy on pigments over the years, I have really come to respect Holbein, the Holbein, somebody said, oh, it's Holbein or Holbein. It's not Holbein. It's not EA. It's EI. So I don't know, Holbein. But see, for me, when I say bine, typically bine, that's a long I, that's I-N-E, an E on the end. So any grammar sleuths out there, if you want to put this to the test or figure out how it's supposed to be, Holbein. I just say potato patata. If you know what I mean, then that's fine. So getting back, so Holbein and Daniel Smith, Winsor Newton, and I have actually picked up a couple of M. Graham, and I do have a Schminke. I needed an ultramarine blue so bad, and someone said that the Schminke was very close in the color tones of Winsor Newton, so I selected that. And what do I mean by that? Well, you know what? Ultramarine blue is pigment blue 29. Okay. PB29. Now, not all PB29s are alike. You actually can look at other PB29s used by other manufacturers for professional paints, and you will see slight variations of the ultramarine blue. I don't know why that is. I don't know why. Maybe it's the location of where they get the mineral from. I don't know. But the Winsor or the ultramarine blue that I love with Winsor Newton is also provided in that same tonal and granulating, beautiful granulating color was from Schminke. And I hope I said that properly too. Whatever. So anyway, today I wanted to talk a little bit about the neutrals or the grays. I can go into every color possible, but a lot of people, they really don't think about the grays in the sense of, when we're creating our pictures, we're always going to be looking at the value scales, right? So, tint is usually you add white, tone is you add a gray, and shade you add a black. But in watercolor, we look at it a little bit differently. I've never really used, I don't use black. I have them, but I haven't used them. And primarily, one of the main reasons why I probably don't use black as much as I don't know. I'm just trying to pull up. Bear with me for a second here. There's a pigment site that I really like. And I have so many papers open here. It's called Paint List is one of them. And another one is, what's it called? Paint List. And, what is it called? Oh, anyway, I'm not gonna worry about it too much. But I was introduced not that long ago to, when I was, wasn't really introduced, I had it. And like I said, I hadn't really looked at the darks or the blacks very much because I didn't really use them. I made my own with the colors I have. And I say that to my students all the time. Try to make your own darks, right? Try to make your own neutrals, and we'll play with that because that's more in keeping with the color scale. However, that being said, some of our colors that we do love and we've got used to, like Payne's Gray and Indigo. And I'm thinking, what was it here? Was it this one here? Moon Glow. Well, that's a convenience color. But these are convenience colors too, but we use those a lot. I love using Payne's Gray. I use Payne's Gray when I'm doing warm-ups, and they make the most beautiful, Payne's Gray makes the most beautiful silhouettes. This is actually a whole tube in here that I'm wearing down into this. So speaking of which, this is actually a condiment tray I got at a thrift store. And it's porcelain. So porcelain. So here's a Payne's Gray. This is watered down. That's more of a pure pigment. And this is how I would see how that would play out. This is on cellulose. This is on arches. Right, look at how beautiful. See immediately how that gets absorbed in. And I love, see, that's what I like. when I'm introducing water, I want to keep that first stroke nice and vibrant. Whereas this one here, I wasn't able to, unless maybe that was me and I just didn't think about it. But see here, still didn't floating on top. So I add water and it immediately diluted that top part. But see here, I still have that. So that's because the absorbency of the cotton. Let's go over to the rough. Look at that, beautiful. Like, look at that. That looks black, black, black. But depending on who it is, so that's the rough. So that actually plays a little differently. Then, I don't know if you can, how well you can see this. Let me look at my, gotta pop up my web camera here. There we go. I hope that doesn't translate those wavy lines. I'm seeing wavy lines right now. Maybe if I come down a little bit, change it. Come on, you're 4K. Dang it. Oh, anyway, why can't we get a product that says and does what it's supposed to? Anyway, okay, so look at the difference though. You can definitely see I used the same brush. I took the same amount out. Oh, see, there we go. Look at that. The lines are gone. So, but you can see with the rough, look at that. That's still a little bit of water on here, and that's still working for me. If I go over to this one, it's more of a dry brush. I go over here. Well, obviously that's going to have already dispersed, right? But if I come back and reanimate that. So this paint's gray, Winsor Newton, is made with Pigment Blue 29, which is ultramarine blue. And also made with, I believe it's PBK 9, which is ivory black. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to grab an ultramarine blue, and I thought I did. I thought I got an ultramarine blue out. Oi, 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 oi. Now, got oh yeah, that should be in here. No, that's a cobalt blue that's in there. Yeah, that's cobalt. I've got a lot of my paints squeezed out onto the myriad of palettes that I have in here. But I also, what I do is I have several of these porcelain pots. I use porcelain ramekins and porcelain condiment trays and that sort of thing. And that's where I squeeze all my tubes into those. And then I just reanimate them when I need them, when I'm in house. But then I have a palette that will that I'll travel with. So I apologize here, and I'm not going to be editing this, so you can just, if you're a little antsy about going through the dry stuff here, then you can just fast forward. But I did just buy some ultramarine blue, and I don't know where it is. A lot of the other favorite blue, of course, for me is Prussian blue, which is PB27, and PB28 is cobalt blue. What is manganese? I think manganese is just manganese. I don't think manganese blue, which is another really beautiful soft blue. That's manganese right there. I was playing. See, this is Holbein ultramarine. Okay. And Schminky. I got a Schminky and a Holbein. So I should have that in. Schminky. I don't know which one I put that in. I tend to keep, because I have so many tubes of Winsor Newton, I tend to keep any one-offs, such as, Schmank or M. Graham. What's the other one that I said I bought a cobalt from? Wow, that is just crazy. Where did that go? I was just playing with them last night. French ultramarine. And I'm going to be really brokenhearted now that I couldn't get it together. So I apologize. I thought I was a little more organized. Organized chaos, more like it, right? But see, that's the thing about. I used to have a very big container of Daniel Smith. I used them a lot, and then I was gifted these beautiful large tubes of Daniel Smith. And there it is. I was on an outing with an art group and I forgot it. I left it behind the bag that it was all in. And when I realized where it was, I went back, retraced my steps, it was gone. So, and then when I contacted the art group to letting them know I forgot it, and whoever picked it up, if they could bring it back, I would greatly appreciate it. I never did. So we're talking somebody. So this one here, this is French ultramarine blue, and this is with Schminky. So this is the European. You can see the light fastness. This one's got 4 stars. I believe that's as far as it goes. So that's high, light, fast, transparent. And the really nice thing is I love the granulation that French ultramarine gives you. It's, when you look at the sky too, the sky is granulated. It's kind of got that granulated look to it. So that's a Payne's Gray. And so if Payne's Gray is made with PB29, which is ultramarine blue, and PBK9, which is lamp ivory black, let's see if we can't maybe mix our own. So I've just taken lamp black from a tray over here that's outside of the camera here. And you're going to see, depending on the manufacturer, because I also have a Payne's Gray and a Daniel Smith. So actually, let's try that first. So this one's Winsor Newton. I'll put the Daniel Smith over here. And let's use the Daniel Smith's Payne's Gray. I really like Payne's Gray. I think I already said that. But it's just a beautiful, probably because, especially once you find out that it's got ultramarine blue in it, that's probably why it became a favorite. So, but look at right away, it's actually more blue. Even though it's made with the exact same ingredients, I can see already that's a little bluer than that one. Can you see it with the camera? Yeah, it looks like it to me through the camera. And I haven't done anything but just wet brush. So let's bring this here. Yeah, you can definitely see that there's a difference in the color tone between the two, right? That's more blue. Now you can also see with the cellulose, it's buckling already. And this is this cellulose paper. No, I'm going to say that it is not Strathmore. If I use a cellulose, I use a Strathmore 400. That is the highest quality I have found. I don't like Canson. I don't care how many people say how much they like it. I don't like it. I don't know what it is. It pills on me, or I always seem to get a bad batch, but I've never really liked it. So I've never gravitated towards it. However, I really like Strathmore. Some people don't. But that's it. So there you go. Look at that. Hey, isn't that a grand color? Doesn't that look like a stormy sky or a stormy sea? Is that great? But see, you can see there. Whereas I would lend myself more towards this one because of the blue tones. And I would use it for those. And I believe that's the one I did use. Maybe I'll add a little more. Maybe I'll add some PB29 to this here so that I can get it more like the Daniel Smith. So why not? Let me try mix my own. So I've got it going here. I'm just going to do a little swatch. Ooh, Patty. Woohoo. That's a pretty good first off mix. Look at that. I've almost mixed my own Daniel Smith's concoction. Look at that. That's almost that's identical. How about that for a first one? A first one off. Wow, I'm impressed. Hey, I've been doing it for a while. Maybe that helps me. I've got a pretty good eye sometimes for colors. I can see just even slight variations. Someone say that when you get when you have that extra cone in your eye, you can see a million more colors. So that's the Payne's Gray. Indigo is, this is the Winsor Newton that I like to use. I like indigo too. And so I don't have any other manufacturer indigo, only because I don't use it very often in paintings per se. I just use it for when I'm doing those silhouettes too. I love the blue in it. It gives it like a really romantic kind of a silhouette. So we'll go again with the cellulose paper. See how, oh, that's really blue though. Now the pigments here are, I've got it written on the side, PBK, which is black 6, which is ivory, PB15, which is phthalo blue, and PV19, which is violet. Pigment violet 19, which typically would be, you can get PV19 in a quinacridone red is PV19. This here quinacridone rose is also PV19. This one here, permanent magenta, is also PV19. And mineral violet, that's actually a new one that I've seen. That's $22 for this little tube. I got it for $6.95, little shop in Petrolia, Ontario. They bought, it won't be like that forever, but as long as the quantities last, they bought a store had an art store. So this one here is PV15. So V meaning violet. Anyway, they bought out a store that was going out of business, and they just bought their lot. So yeah, so there's a box of whole beans. So I'm going there every week and getting a few more tubes. So that is very, very blue, quite a contrast to the Payne's Gray. Ooh, that's full pigment there. Tap off a little water, but look at how gorgeous. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, that. A little bit of pigment goes a long way. Goes a long way. So this is on rough. Of course, on rough, when you first put the paint down, it's going to look like a dry application until it soaks into that. See that? I love that. This is great because that looks like the surface of water. What water would look like, and you don't have to scrape it. That look great? But if I did this, add more water. See how the color seeped down into the little pockets on this in the rough paper. So that's the thing with rough. It has these pocked papers. Okay, so that is indigo. I wonder if then I could make my own indigo. So that is PB15, which typically we would use. PV15 is the phthalo blue red shade. The PV15-3, I believe, is the green shade. Yeah, 15-3. So we will use the PV15. Just a little dollop I'll put up there in that tray. And the PV19, which I'm going to say will be the red, because you see that's this really kind of a richy bluey tone. It is a blue red. I can see maybe that it's more of a warm tone. Then of course we're going to use the red colors, right? So we're going to use the red, more red. So that's PV19. I'm going to just dab off because we don't want a lot. I'm going to actually start that right there. Put a little more in. Right. And then the lamp black. Oh yeah, really red black. And then I'm going to put a touch of the phthalo. Oop, too much. Okay, let's add a little bit more black. And then add a little bit more red. So my lamp black is a little bit more watered down. Oh, Patty, I put too much red in. It's okay. This is how we do it. Okay. There we go. Yeah, I think that's a little too purpley. Which cool phthalo, like the green shade. So this is a little bit of, so now this is where I'm into the wool alchemy here. All right. Clean the water. Clean my brush. Fresh water. Oh, for crying out loud, I'm always heavy on the blue. But I think. So there you go. Pretty close, not as vibrant. So this PV19, I think, is a little too red, right? Which is making this duller, a little bit too warm. Because this phthalo, I'm going to try that blue, a little of that lamp black, right? Let's see what that looks like here. Well, that's more like it there. And that's just, so you know what? Because that's the Windsor, I think it was the, oh no, it wasn't. It was the Holbein ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, red shade. So I didn't add any of the PV19, but there must be PV19 in the blue side, like in the red of the, when they say red shade, even though it's classed as PV19 or PB15, I'm sorry, phthalo blues, which will go under different names. It would be Windsor blue or primary blue or vibrant blue in other manufacturers, but this is generally used for PB15. So anyway, even though it's on the red shade, it probably has the PV19 slightly added to it to give it that red, you know, that reddy purpley. This is a little too purple. That is pretty dang close right there. So if I come in here like this, that's going to look very close to the indigo that I just applied there, isn't it? So that's what you got to do. You play and you mix, and then you make notes, right? So you don't have to go out and buy all these convenience colors. If you understand your pigments, right? If you understand what your pigments are made from, so you look on the labels of them at the store and you go, oh, okay, I got lamp, I got lamp or ivory. I don't lamp black is actually called PBK 6/7. So it's got a little bit of ivory in it and it's got PBK 7 in it. And that's always what's that in there? I think this one here was. So this is the Winsor Newton, but I think that's what that was. PBK 6. So this is the Winsor Newton Indigo. Really crazy. Huh. I think. PB15, PV9, PBK6. So why is that so dark now? No, it was this one. Okay, so two different manufacturers. This one here is the Daniel Smith. So look at that. Two different manufacturers. This is the Quinn PV that's with that Quinn red. This one here. And the Quinn PV19, the BK6, this one. And the Phthalo. That's crazy. So look at that contrast already. So that's kind of cool. So that's what I'm saying, folks. You can create your own. So, and it varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. So if your indigo, which indigo typically is, it's not black, it's more of a bluey black or a deep blue. And that's your third eye color too, your indigo. So, which also makes a beautiful silhouette color. So that's that phthalo blue. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out is Viridian Green. Viridian Green is PG7, I believe. Yes. Oh, what's on here? I think I see another. Oh, so this one here's the whole bind is Viridian is pigment PG7 and 18. Well, that's a bummer because Viridian itself on its own, and it's under the other name, another name, they call it Emerald, but it's PG7. But I like just pure pigments because when you have just pure pigments, which mean one, right? That's a pure pigment, one pigment. PV19 is a pure pigment. PB15 is a pure pigment, right? PBK9, all of those. PBR, which is brown 7, that's actually under, I believe, raw umber. And it's also known as Van Dyke Brown as well. So anyway, this is 3-star, but I'm going to try it out because I just wanted, my point of this was Viridian makes fantastic blacks. So you use your Viridian, all right? So I'm going to I'll bring this over. There's my Viridian. I'm going to use a Viridian, put a little water there. And I'm going to use this, which is that PB 15, correct, right? I'm going to mix those two together. You get this beautiful turquoise, absolutely stunning turquoise. Okay, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I could sit and just mix colors all day. Actually, that was still trying to mix. I have a little bit of the green still on my brush. So that's, you got to be sure that, you got the proper mixing, because sometimes the pigment gets caught up with the natural hairs. Sometimes the pigment gets caught up in there, and And that's a no-no because it'll make a mess of your painting. So I'm going to have to dump that water out because of making all the black. See? Makes black water. But you always have your clean water clean. Okay. So now I'm going to take the PV19. I'm going to take a dollop of that. Just a dollop. What's a dollop? I'm just going to put a touch. But that's still not enough. See? It's a little darker. Right? It's a little darker, but not enough. And I'm wondering which one I have to do the most of. I believe it would be the Viridian. Notice I'm going to pat that down a little bit more. See how I'm just coming to the side of it to add the water? So it doesn't get stuck in my brush. So, and that's the thing too, is when I put a full tube in here, you can see that this was starting to get hard in the tube. It was a tube that had got stuck at the back of the box, so to speak. And look at that deep turquoise. Look at that. Ooh, baby. I love Viridian Green. It's a pure pigment. Okay. I make my own greens too. Now, I am actually going to use permanent rose. I'm going to do that because the permanent rose is a staining color, but it's the most transparent and the most vibrant, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to bring this in there. I'm going to put that rose in there. Still a little green. But if you can get the green and the red to make that really nice brown, and then you add a touch of the blue, you're into the black. So that's more looking more along the line of almost the indigo now, right? But look, isn't that gorgeous? So it is a purpley though. It's not black. So that's telling me it's not a true Viridian. I know I've got a Viridian somewhere. Another Viridian. Do I have it in Winsor Newton? No. Or Daniel Smith? That's not Daniel Smith. Ah. So the only thing about having all these, all of these, see, Hooker's green is another convenience green, but it's two pigments to make that, so it's just a convenience green. Another green that I like is the olive green. It's a beautiful color. So, and that's, I love any of the oxides. If you have an oxide and then it's mixed with another color, you can be guaranteed it's going to have this beautiful earthy tone to it. So like the red oxide, the green oxide, this one here has got the iron oxide, synthetic iron oxide, doesn't matter, but it's a PY42. And then of course it's the chlorinated copper phthalocyanine PG7. So that would be the Viridian. So I wouldn't use a whole lot with that. That would be a color I would use on its own because it already has two in it. If I was going to add another pigment to this, I would want it to be a purer pigment. So I would either add a yellow or a more Viridian. And if I wanted it darker, of course, then I would just add whatever the opposite color, right? We'll make it that brown or the darker, your opposite color makes the gray, right? So cobalt green. So many of these colors, I bought a lot of colors in the past because I thought I was supposed to have them. And I was just naive. And every class that I took thereafter, whatever that artist said, I went out and bought the colors. And, you know, as when you know better, you do better. And that's what I say to my students now. All of these are really just a marketing ploy, right? They're just convenience colors that get you to purchase more paint. But with that even being said, sometimes having some convenience colors rather than taking, especially if you're out plein air, right? And sitting there trying to taking the time to mix a perfect green or this green that you see. And if you're familiar with some of the convenience greens, like for instance, this green gold, oh my God, it's so amazing. Green gold is another one of my favorites. I have that in my palette, my travel palette. But I cannot seem to find a Viridian. Now, it may be in the student colors. But, oh, I wanted to tell you. So the Academy, Grumbacher Academy paints, super, super impressed with them because they tell you exactly what the pigment is on the side. Some student grades, they say they're high-end student grade, but they won't tell you what the pigment is. So I'm actually going to do that on here because I don't want to interrupt. But look at that. What? Isn't that awesome? And I'll show you what olive green looks like. So if you're hanging out with me, if you're also a paint geek, so you can tell I haven't used this for a while and it did separate a little bit. You can see that the gum arabic has kind of squeezed to the surface. It's a big tube. You can't, oh my gosh, you know how much these big tubes cost today? So ridiculous. I mean, they were costly back in the day too, but I used to think, oh, I'll buy a big tube and I'll have it for, a little while. Not realizing that once I got to understand paints more, I started making all my own greens. Ooh, I'm gonna have to put that onto a palette. You saw that coming, didn't you? She's squeezing the bottom of it. It's gonna bring pressure to the top. Ah! Look at how gorgeous that is. Oh, so it's very weak. It's a very weak transparent color though. So this is what's really nice when you're laying down your greens in a field, right? And then you're going to put any of your darker tones on top, right? The highlight colors, right? And then there's a green. So hookers, of course, is like primary. It is. Don't do that at home. Don't use your teeth. I'm just going to go into the lid this time. There's the hookers. So that's a green. Very, very like Irish green, right? That's Irish green. I love greens. I got my students the other day. I don't even have the booklet here. So I used just 6 colors on a palette, 3 warm primaries and 3 cool primaries. And we use that through the duration of the class. And it is, I just do watercolor 101, right? I teach the basics. And the amount of green. So I have them one afternoon and it's really quite relaxing because for people who have never taken watercolor before, they have no idea. And then I come in talking like a geek and I've got to play it down because I get all excited and to them, their eyes are glazing over. And then I get panicky because I really want them to see and feel the excitement that I have with watercolors and the beauty of these mixing these pigments and getting them down onto paper and creating something beautiful with them. But so anyway, that's one way to calm them out, calm the eyes and unglaze the eyes, is I get them to mix their greens. And so they think that just taking a little bit of yellow on one and a little bit of blue from the other, they mix a green and that's it. I'm going, no, no, no. So I have them do the whole value scale, like make your 50-50, then add a little more yellow, and then make your 50-50, then add a little more green. And you've got this huge scale of greens. And then, oh man, and it's a beautiful exercise. And it's even one you can do yourself, even for seasoned artists. Here, I got to use. This hasn't been used for a while. This is called Perylene Green. And Perylene Green is pigment Perylene Green PBK 31. How can it be green if it's a BK? That's pigment black 31. I was blown away when I looked at this. I bought this in a time where I wasn't pigment savvy like I am now. I didn't have a clue. That is considered a black. I'm going to put that on. Because it's a BK 31, it's going to go on the page. Oh, see now, first applied, look at how that's a black green. You know how you have blue blacks, red blacks, brown blacks? Yeah, that's, I think, where they get their PBK numbers from. So that's that on rough. Let's take that over to, I'm going to water that down just a little, see how that plays out. There we go. Isn't that fun? Yeah. Creating a little patchwork. Let's do that here. Yeah, so it's really, really quite the contrasting color. So this is on the Arches cold press. I'm just going to hug this because it is quite a contrast in the change. Look at that turquoise I made. Ooh. Yeah, Winsor Newton does have turquoise. Cobalts, the cobalts are really nice too. They're not strong pigments. They're very subtle, very soft, subtle colors. Not high vibrancy or high, what you call saturation, I guess. You get into a lot of those snobby words, I call them. Oh, shall we do this one here because that's the cellulose? We might as well, right? Stay with the program, Patty. So let's do this. Do this one over here. Ooh. So it is very dark, very intense. A very intense green, but I wouldn't call it black. I would if it was full pigment like I first put on over here. But you can see just putting it on the cellulose waters away. Now, you know, I don't want to kick anybody in the shins here. When I say this, if all you, like I said before, if all you can afford is cellulose, it's more affordable paper, then, you know, practice, 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 and you probably will be able to paint quick enough. Because it dries quick too. Whereas at least this has a little bit, like I can come back to this in a few minutes and I'll still be able to put some paint and have that surface. I could probably play with that surface a little bit, right? Now the next one that I absolutely love, I found this color when my Francoise was alive. My beautiful Francoise McKenna. She and I were like two peas in a pod. And so this one is made with, okay, it's called Undersea Green. And it's made with PB29, which is ultramarine blue, quinacridone gold. Wow, or pigment orange 48. So quin gold, quinacridone gold, Daniel Smith made the best quinacridone gold out there. Nobody could compare to their quin gold color. And then they quit making it. Broke our hearts. And I have no idea why, but theirs wasn't a full pigment. The quin gold was pigment orange and pigment yellow 150. So we had 48 orange and 150 yellow. But it is a stunning, rich, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous color. I'm going to show you. Get this. Oh, so it's showing too yellowy here. There. It's got this beautiful, and it's translucent. Just this beautiful, beautiful, like, oh, sunsets, and isn't that beautiful? Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Now, that being said, if you're probably wondering what PO looks like, well, PO, or pigment orange, can look different under different manufacturers again. However, quinacridone burnt orange is PO 48. I thought, oh, that's the first time I saw Daniel or a PO used separately. It was always like a quin gold, or it was in another orange mix. But this is a pure pigment. So I could probably make my own quin gold, but I don't want to because Daniel Smith made the perfect. So I'm going to come over here with, look at, so you can see how absolutely gorgeous. This actually, some people say that it looks just like, well, right here in the camera, it does look like it's orange. But to be honest, it really does look more of like a burnt sienna here to me. Right, when you're sitting down, so beautiful. It's absolutely a lovely, lovely color, and it's one that is also on my palette. And it's not that it's used all the time, but it's a great one to pull in when you're doing your landscapes or anything, really. I mean, it depends on what it is you want to paint, right? It would look good on any painting. That's all I got to say. Okay, so the other one, like I said, the undersea green. We'll get back to that. I'm not really sure. Oh, I know why I digressed. Because it said it had quinacridone gold in it, which is this. Not gold. Yeah, PO 48. Let's have a look. So you can tell I've done this. This has been a while. Haven't used it. Because once I got to know pigments, I started making my own greens. But this is fun. So you can definitely see the orange influence in this color, right? That quinacridone pigment 048. 048. Bingo. So let's put it here. These beautiful toned down pigments. And then, you know, bringing it to its full pigment. Look how dark that is. So let's get into here. Rough. Look at that rough paper. Right? Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I think that's about, oh, the other thing I wanted to do was the browns. So I have, so the BR7, I think that's, yes. So that's BR7. This calls it burnt umber. And this BR7, this one here is M. Graham. This one here is this is M. Graham, and this is Daniel Smith. And so they are, so this is interesting. They're calling this natural iron oxide containing manganese pigment BR7. And that's raw umber. I believe I have a raw umber in a Winsor Newton as well, but it's, or burnt umber, I mean. Yeah. So this is just PBR7. I'm using a magnifying glass because my eyes can't see those tiny little letters and numbers. And the other thing that's really interesting too is Daniel Smith has been using a lot in the last years, a lot of actual natural ground pigments. So like tourmaline, tiger's eye. This is a tiger eye genuine. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to show you. Let's do the tourmaline black. We'll get rid of the blacks first. Look at that. So this is a tourmaline black. It is actually very milky, very transparent. So when I say milky, it's kind of, it has a milkiness to it. It's not like clear. So maybe milky is considered semi-opaque, I guess. But you'll see that once I put it down. So I'll put it on, it's quite beautiful. It actually laid down quite nice on the cold press and also the rough. So this is tourmaline. This is pure tourmaline taken from the ground, stuff I have rock hounded. I've been a rock hounder also for years. But look at that. This is like total natural, no synthetic at all. This is natural black. This comes exactly from the earth, Mother Earth, tourmaline black. And I would use that because it's pure pigment. It's a natural color. I love the earth colors. So I'll do it over here on the cellulose. So you see how it rides the surface? I can go a long way with it because it's not soaking in. And look at the marks it makes. See, it's not a nice even wash, right? Look. So yeah. When I run my brush across here, I know exactly what I'm getting. Look at that. See that beautiful flow? Because it's absorbing. It's absorbing at the rate it's supposed to. And I know what it's doing. I'm very happy about that. This here, look at how that's drying. It's all streaky. Yeah. So that's my case as to why you use 100% cotton. Okay, so let's go to the browns. Right, that's a bit much. So this is the raw umber by M. Graham. And this is the one that's an oxide. So I know right away I'm going to like it because it has an oxide. It's created with iron oxide containing manganese, which is also a natural earth pigment. So here we go. Here's our rough. Beautiful brown. Poopy brown. I said it. Poopy brown. That would be a healthy one. Okay, there we go. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful land. Come down on the side of a cliff. Look at that. Okay, we'll go on to the cold press here. Beautiful, beautiful. Doesn't that make your heart sing? Beautiful natural tones. Let's get some more water. Brush that away. I really like the way it worked on here. I love that on the rough. So we got a little bit of a streak going on here. So that there is a difference too when you're working with the natural pigments. But see now that that's absorbing into, it's absorbed into the cotton. How beautiful. Don't these colors look nice together? This actually is quite the little scene, isn't it? A little triptych. I like it. So now let's go over to the cellulose. See, even when I'm putting it on the full pigment like I wanted to there, see, it just sits and puddles, just sits. It'll be a while before that sinks in. So now one thing you could do with cellulose is wet it first. Okay, you wet it first, get it soaked in, get it down to that satin look. When you get it down to that satiny look, okay, then the paper's ready. But see, I can already see it starting to dry. Dries very quickly. Now come in with the blue, with the brown. So see the difference? It's more of an even wash. So there you have it, folks. That is the, what did I say? Oh, it's burnt orange. That's the M Graham raw umber. Now, Daniel Smith burnt umber, much deeper brown, more of a reddy brown. And this is PBR7. Doesn't say anything more about it. So I don't know if it's a synthetic or not. You could find all this out, handprint.com, and they will give you the actual breakdown, the chemical components and everything else. This one's going to look more like, yeah, see? Oh, it's pretty close. But see, yeah, it is a more red in color, brown. Yeah. See, the beauty with arches, 100% cotton, is you can come in with wet on dry. It lends itself very well to wet on dry or wet on wet. This here, wet on dry doesn't work as well as wet on wet. You pre-wet your paper, and then you can come in with your colors, and you'll get a little bit more of an even wash. So let's do this on that wet side there. It's already still a little wet as I pre-wet the paper. There we go. Again, though, you can see where it's, see, it's not laying down very nicely. So there you have it there, folks, right there on camera. And here we go. I already did that one, so we got to do the rough. Look at that beautiful rough paper. And it's buckled a little bit, not much. And this one too, but not much. Not where it's going to distract from the painting. Let's add a little more water. I love to do that on the bottom and just let it wash away. Isn't that cool? So that is that. Now, dun dun dun, tiger eye. Daniel Smith made a tiger eye. This is actually a natural stone too, and I believe it's one of the. It's in the Chalcedony family. Caledony. It's CH. Chalcedony. There's quite a few, like cat's eye, tiger eye, is in the same family. That's probably why they call it that. But it's kind of, it looks like it's got like a glass film over top of another inner. But this one here has got more of a ruddier, dirty brown look to it. But it's beautiful because it's also from Mother Earth. So it's a true earth pigment. And it's very milky, so it's I would say semi-opaque. This one here started to harden. So that could be because of the very nature of the pigment itself being pure stone, and then brought in that way. I'm gonna see that more of a more neutral dirt brown. But isn't that great though that we've got these pure earth pigments? And there you have it. I think you probably, I would like to show how you make your own grays and how you can get some of the lighter grays, but of course those are made with whites. I was going to talk about the grays, the white grays, you know, like what's that one called? It's that lady gray, I think it is. What is it called? Lady or Jane's gray. I think that's from Jane Blundell. Might be her, but she makes hers with ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and then blacks. So, well, let's try that burnt sienna. Let's try it. Let's try it, try it, try it. This is burnt sienna with the PBR. I'll show you what that looks like with just a PBR. So a lot of burnt siennas, though, are actually made or they're labeled as PR 101. So this is burnt sienna. Oh, another one of my beautiful favorite colors. Don't you think that looks a little bit like the orange? Hmm? Yeah, quinacridone orange, pigment orange. But it is classed as a red if it's under the PR 101. Now, speaking of Jane Blundell, I cannot say enough about that website. She's also beautiful watercolors, and I believe she does even classes online. Shout out, Jane. She has been so instrumental in giving me an understanding of pigments as well. Handprint.com, of course, that satisfies the geeky side because it gets into chemical compositions and things like that. But Jane Blundell, her site is extensive, and she literally tries out every brand of paint out there, every manufacturing brand, and she compares them, and she has her favorites too and why. I was going to make a Jane's gray. So let's try that. We'll get a little bit of the burnt sienna. Actually, I did a little bit more than a little bit, but French ultramarine blue. Oh, no, what's that? It's not French ultramarine blue. Okay, let's do this. That's French ultramarine blue. Ooh, look at that beautiful, beautiful blue. That look gorgeous. I'm going to mix it over here. I had way too much. That's okay. Oh, boy. Now, this is French ultramarine blue and this right here. Look how dark that is. That's just French ultramarine blue. And burnt sienna. PBR 7. I'm going to say it that way. Because somebody goes, oh no, I got it. So that's like a lot of the, look at that's black. It's black, folks. Isn't that awesome? Bring it over here too. Now I had on this side a little bit too much burnt sienna with it, with the ultramarine. Isn't that something? But wasn't I supposed to add something else? A little white, right? So I've got titanium. I don't have any other whites. Chinese white, I think, is classed as a, is this one 6 or 7? PW6, titanium. And I believe this, the 5 is the Chinese white. Well, I screwed that up. Way too much white. But I made an opaque brown. Right? If I go over top, yeah. Go over top. There we go. There we go. I made the gray. That's Jane's gray right there. I saved the day. I saved it. Okay. So I could probably bring that. So it's not up to me. That's, I want to make sure that's really well mixed. But I find that with the, yeah, I guess it is a bit of a gray. Wasn't that fun? Well, I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed doing it. So I just thought I might as well videotape it, and maybe somebody out there will get some value out of it. This is why I like to find out about pigments. You know, like you know, it's just a fabulous way where you don't have to get caught up in the scheme, the marketing scheme. Get yourselves, you know, so your pure pigments, you know, your single pigments, your viridians, your, you know, BR7s, BK6, BK7, which is your blacks, maybe just get a 6 or a 7, and the 9, which is your lamp. Well, your lamp is apparently the PBK6/7, and your ivory is the PBK9. I don't know about the other blacks. I heard one, well, I think, wasn't it one of the ones I read off? But, or single, like black tourmaline. We already saw how beautiful that was. I will definitely be putting that on my palette and using it more. It got put to the back burner. You know, and soft browns, which is the tiger eye. That's a single pigment. The PO 48, which is the pigment orange, like all the colors you can get from that. PV19, your PB29, your PB27, your PB28. You know, those are your blues. Yeah. And yellows, well, we could talk up the yin yang on yellows, but I have several yellows. I have several, because I can make many greens out of those, all those yellows. So, but that's kind of a subject of its own, all the different yellows out there, all the different reds. But I have the red oxide. I love it so much, which is your earth tones. And, you know, the Indian red, the light red, the cad red, which is your warm red. And of course the violets, right? So your permanent, it has to say permanent rose or permanent alizarin crimson, because otherwise it's a fugitive on those alizarins and those roses. Even opera rose is a fugitive. So what that means is, when I was talking earlier about light fastness, that means that it will not last very long. Those beautiful roses that you painted in Opera Rose, probably if it's in light or indirect light even, it will fade away over time. Now, that being said, you can do some really good proactive things like put UV masterpiece or museum glass over top of it, and that will even prolong it that much more because it will block those UV lights that fade that out. Okay, so thanks for hanging out with me, and maybe we'll catch you on another fun little mixy. What am I going to call this? Watercolor alchemy, playing with pigments. Yeah, there we go.